Hey Science 20s, this is the last lesson of geology. So it's about climate change, which is all about, I guess, the climate and rocks and the movement of plate tectonics. So this lesson is basically explaining the facts and the science to the best of science knowledge currently. So you will have some questions on this on the test, your writing test. It's a big Google form that you're going to have today and tomorrow to work on, so Tuesday and Wednesday. All right, let's get started. So climate change. All right, first off, climate changes. That's true. The climate has always changed. When scientists look at things in the past, it's been hot. When scientists look at things in the past, it's been cold. It is a scientific fact that the climate has changed. Okay, that's true. All right. How do we know the climate has changed? How do we know it just hasn't been the exact same average temperature on Earth millions and millions and millions of years ago? Well, we have rock data. Different types of rock form under different temperatures. We have data that's stored in ice. The ice data and the gases that are trapped within the ice also tell us general temperatures. We have vegetation that's left behind that is fossilized, that could only have grown during certain temperatures. We have rocks that have been left in random places that have been left by ice expansion during very cold phases. Also, we have data from the sea, which the lower down you go, it's like a time machine. We get data from very, very deep in the ocean. So there's a whole bunch of data there. Okay. Lastly, people run computer models backward to show, their model worked out. If it was around this temperature with all of the factors, ice would advance during one of the ice ages and leave enough evidence to show that the model was correct. Also, if they run a model backwards, they're like, because of the various placements of the Earth tectonic plates, remember they moved over time, and there'd be different ocean currents, plus there'd be different CO2 levels, it would be a lot warmer. So the models that other scientists have used have all come together to corroborate that climate in the past has changed. So that's a fact. Now remember that's very important. These scientists have shown and proven that the climate in the past has changed. Okay. So why is there a big deal about climate change right now? Okay. So the data shows that instead of slowly slipping back into an ice age, which we were on course for, if when the scientists look at the data, we were slowly. This takes thousands and thousands and thousands of years. This doesn't happen like now, like a blink in the eye. This happens very, very, very slowly. We should be slipping back into an ice age. The Earth wobbles a bit as it goes around the sun, and we're wobbling in such a way that the Earth is getting a little less energy, which means that we're going to have a little less energy, so the ice age will occur. Now, the data showed that we were cooling until only about 100 years ago, that maybe a little bit more, 100, 120, 130 years ago, the data slowly stopped cooling and then started to rise, and then the last 30 or 40 years, it's rocketed up, heating. So the climate is changing and getting hotter. So let's talk about some things that people think about climate change first off. Okay. First off, this is what a lot of people say. The climate has always changed, so it's changing now. What's the big deal? It's natural. The climate has always changed in the past. Now, the first part of that statement is true. The climate has always changed in the past. The second part of that is not true. Remember those same scientists that proved that the climate has changed in the past? They're the exact same scientists that are saying now the heating trends are not normal. So either you believe that their data from the past was true, then you'd have to believe their data from The now to the future is true. You can't just say, oh, they were right before and now they're wrong now, because they're using the exact same techniques. Okay. Also, we've been tracking the gas that basically envelops the Earth called carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is not inherently bad. Plants need it. It creates a warm environment for Earth. We are actually in the wrong spot for life. We should be way colder than we are right now, but CO2 has kept us like a greenhouse. The problem is that CO2 in the past caused warming trends. CO2 now is at the highest point it's ever been recorded in human history. There have been other times, way millions of years ago, where there's been higher CO2. That's true. But we're talking like millions and millions and millions of years ago. This is over the span of 50 years. That is a much different time span. Okay, another myth. Most scientists don't agree with climate change. It's only a few, like Bill Nye. Okay, now that's not true. There's around a 97% consensus, it's probably higher, among the experts that study climate change. So these are the people that have the research data, they work every day, and they understand the science. They have a 97 plus percentage consensus, which means they agree the climate is changing and it's caused by humans. Now, if you were to ask doctors who are very, very, very intelligent, went to school for many, many years, if they think climate change is real, it's not going to be 97%. But remember, they're not experts in the field. If you were to ask teachers, it wouldn't be 97%. We don't have access to the research. I haven't been out on ice sheets taking data. Or if you're to ask people who work at Save on Foods, it's not going to be the same percentage. In science, we don't have time to know everything. So in science, we defer to the experts. And the experts, the consensus is climate change is occurring. Can you find climate scientists who don't agree that climate change is happening? Absolutely. I'm sure you can. I'm sure you could Google that right now and find a few. You could find some doctors. I'm sure you could. If you like Google the internet, you could find some medical doctors who went to school for 10 years who would tell you that vaccines cause autism. You could. They are outliers. They are not the majority. Okay, myth 3. It's not that bad. Well, I hate to break it to you, it's bad. Here are the things that are affected by climate change. Agriculture. There are places on Earth where it's getting harder to grow things that keep us fed. When climate change, the worst parts of it start to occur in 2050, there may be places on Earth that will never be able to grow things ever again. It affects our health with heat waves. It affects us because sea levels will rise. The ocean is becoming acidic because carbon dioxide is being absorbed into the ocean at an unnatural rate. Carbon dioxide and water make carbonic acid, which is acidic. Okay. Now, there are some good things about climate change for Alberta. We're going to have not as cold winters potentially. That's great. Our growing season for crops in Alberta will get better. That's true. So some things about climate change will probably actually benefit certain places in the world. But the negatives are going to overwhelm the positives. You can't say, oh, our growing season increased by 3 or 4 weeks. That's awesome. And then the equator can never grow food again. Say goodbye to bananas. Say goodbye to coffee. That will be sad. Okay, here's another myth. The Earth is going to be underwater in 10 years. End of life as we know it. That's a myth. That is stupid. That is frustrating. Okay, so it's true that the ice on Greenland and Antarctica and all of the glaciers is rapidly melting. That's bad. But it's not like, in 10 years, New York is going to be completely submerged like in an apocalyptic disaster movie. The sea levels are slowly rising. All coastal cities know this. They've actually had to install and develop technology to keep the sea levels at bay in the last 20 years. Anybody that works in like a big coastal city that's right on the water, if you talk to the engineering department, they've had to figure out ways to keep the water from flooding parts of the city. That's going to get worse, but it's not going to be in 10 years. Maybe for some places it's going to be bad, but we're talking like between 50 and 100 years. Small islands, though, have been completely submerged by sea ice melt. That's true. Little islands don't exist anymore. Here's another myth. Oil and gas need to be phased out now. We can no longer use carbon. That's really frustrating. That's unfortunately idealistic and not true. Okay, it would be nice if we could just transition to alternative energy, and all of the people that had jobs in oil and gas and plastics could find jobs in the new industries. That's not going to happen. This can't happen overnight. It can't happen fast. This is going to be very, very slow. We still need oil and gas to run most of our vehicles on Earth and heat most of the homes in cold climates. The other problem with alternative energy is we could install enough solar power, solar panels and windmills to run all of the electricity in Canada. We could do that. It's totally possible. It would cost billions and billions and billions of dollars, but we could do it. Where we're having problems right now, and the scientists are the first to admit this, is with storage. We can't store the electricity effectively yet. That's changing, but we're not there yet. So it's very true. If we have a whole bunch of days where there's cloud coverage and there's no wind and everybody needs electricity, we may run out. We can't rival the carbon-hydrogen bond energy in oil and gas. We can't. We're getting there. There are more and more electric cars every day, and even transitioning away from coal to natural gas is a little bit better from a CO2 perspective. So if somebody's telling you we can transition tomorrow, that's not realistic. Okay, it's idealistic. So here's my conclusion. Now, this is my opinion. My opinion is based on the facts. What I've just told you so far, those are facts. Now, this is my opinion as a teacher, so you can agree with my opinion, yes or no, okay? So here's my opinion. Based on the evidence, climate change is a thing. It's bad, and it's us. I don't know if that's an opinion. That's more like a fact, okay? It's my opinion that getting out of this mess is not going to be easy, and it's not cut and dry. It's my opinion, based on reading all of the data, that the first really, really bad effects of climate change are still decades away. We're heading towards it. We haven't done enough to avoid this future. But the problem is that everybody in government, think of somebody who's in government, maybe not Justin Trudeau, he's kind of young, but think of everybody, a politician that you know. Right? Are they going to be alive in 2050? No, they're not. They're going to be dead. I'm probably going to be dead, or I'm going to be a very, very old man by 2050. So I can't do anything in 2050 to help the world. I'm going to be probably an old man in an assisted living home. And that's the big problem, is that people in power can't see that far in the future to plan ahead. And that's the big problem. So to get out of this, for now, we need a middle way. We do need to be transitioning to alternative energy, but realize that until we make some breakthroughs, we are going to be using oil and gas. But the alternative energies may need tax dollars to help mitigate the effects of climate change down the road. We also may need to use nuclear power. That's a very, very good possibility. The new nuclear reactors are a lot safer than the old ones, and they produce tons of energy without CO2. Or we might have to rely on technologies that haven't been invented yet. There's a really cool one that's in prototype stage called CO2 capture, where it basically sucks carbon dioxide out of the air. They're building it in BC. Can you imagine how exciting that would be if you just had to build a giant plant that sucked CO2 out of the air? So we could still use oil and gas until other things get better. That would be amazing. So that's my climate change story. A little bit of facts and just my opinion. Okay, so there'll be a couple little questions you'll do today, and if you're done that, you can move on to the Google Geology unit test.